What's up, homies? Welcome to the first episode of our Mandalorian recap / podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts from, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be doing a review recap of Chapter 9, The Marshal, the very first episode of Season 2, The Mandalorian. Also want to let you know that we did a reaction to the first episode as well, which you can find down in the description below. If you're listening on podcast, jump over to the Heroes Reforged YouTube channel. We're going to be doing those for every single episode, which I believe is 8 chapters to season 2.
Yep.
I can't wait. It was so worth it. I'm so glad we did it because there were some unbelievably amazing moments.
Make sure you watch it because Adam completely 404 errors out. Adam not found for like a good 5 minutes.
I definitely do.
Watch
that
it.
being said, I do want to let people know that there will be spoilers in this. So if you have not watched the first episode of season 2, please watch it. It's so damn good. It was amazing. To just be completely blunt. It was absolutely amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
But I definitely recommend watching before you check out this review. Going into it,
so excited.
You know, we were coming off of a lot of hype from season 1, the finale. We met Giancarlo Esposito's character. We got to see the tease for the Darksaber. All these things that happen in the first few chapters. And this first episode actually really kind of deals with some of it, but also none of it. And I kind of found that to be really refreshing. And I'm glad that we didn't just kind of jump into Mando and the child having to kind of get back with the rest of the crew, and that we really are going to just be playing off like this is a mission. We will obviously see characters like Cara Dune again, and we'll get to see, you know, some of the other supporting characters that we saw, and I'm sure we'll get back to where that story ended. But I love that this story was just about like, all right, Mando and the child, his first objective is to reunite, you know, the child with his species, which we still have not gotten an official name for the species that Yoda came from. So it was great to just be able to just jump into this thing.
I think
Absolutely.
it is cool that this episode has given us very little to none new information about the questions that we had. Everything you just mentioned, Adam, that it is easier to talk about what we do know, which is basically Boba Fett's alive. That's it. Or a clone who is in the desert or something like
could be a clone.
That's the new piece of the puzzle, because at the end of this little campaign, and it does feel like Dungeons and Dragons, and it does feel like an old expanded universe book or a Star Wars novel, or, I mean, speaking of the Star Wars novels, you were right. I heard about this through social media, but wasn't aware because I haven't read this book yet. But the Chuck Wendig book, Aftermath, which takes place right after Return of the Jedi, has a character, Cobb Vanth, and that's Timothy Olyphant. That's awesome that they're able to pull from that. It feels so much like the expanded universe of this show. It feels like, if I can kind of diss the old expanded universe for a second, I wish they never did stories beyond Return of the Jedi. And the only reason they did is because George Lucas was like, I'm done. We're done. We're never going to do that.
I think I'm done making Star Wars stories.
What they should have done is they should have done, for each year that we moved past Return of the Jedi, they should have allowed 1 year in the Star Wars universe to take place. Meaning, if you want to tell a story with Luke, go for it. So that you weren't feeling that pressure of like, we got to get Mark Hamill back to do episode 7. You know, instead we're just allowing that story to progress. I guess that would have been cool. But in any way, what's interesting is that there were no movies happening then, but expanded universe stuff was going. And now we're getting both. So the movies and the TV shows that are official are able to look at the official comics and books too and pull from that. And it's super exciting, but so little information about the progression of that quest, other than he goes and finds a guy who he heard was Mandalorian, but it's not. It's this guy. He's wearing the armor. And he's going to get the armor by the end of the episode. You know, he got some loot, and then we're going to continue the way we were. And like you said, Adam, it's refreshing, and it was exciting and fun, and the pacing of the Mandalorian show, which I think
it's an hour-long episode, which is the longest episode they've done, but man, it flew.
Yeah.
That pacing is like we were talking about while watching the show, movies versus TV show, movie versus TV show. Star Wars movies are so fast-paced because they have to do so much in 2 hours, and it has to be so epic. But like, once you get used to and you're familiar with that Mandalorian pace and you settle in, and we were all settled in, and it was really cool. And then by the end, it got so freaking epic. It was so fun. I had such a good time. It also might be my most favorite episode, although I do love there's some stuff I love from season 1 as well. But
Agreed.
Augustine, what'd you think, man?
I think this, so the way I look at it, because I'm married to my wife who's not a diehard Star Wars fan. So what I like to look for is the objectiveness of it all. Like, what about the people who are just watching this for the first time? They're not necessarily involved in the Boba Fett lore. They're not necessarily involved in like, oh, this Beskar Steel and Anakin's speed racer engine, and like all
so
this
many
stuff that's
Easter eggs in
happening,
this
right?
episode. It's ridiculous.
So many Easter eggs for us,
Yeah.
but for my wife, it's like, I don't
Yeah.
care. Like, I just want to watch Baby Yoda be happy, which honestly, I think all of us do, really. But it's so expertly told. It feels like a great Western. It feels like there's no moment in this episode where you're not involved in the story. It's being expertly told in a compact amount of time. I feel like we get this kind of storytelling in a longer. I felt like I watched a movie.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I watched episode 1 of an amazing show that is going to continue. I just, my mind is blown by the effectiveness of the storytelling that's happening, by the Easter eggs that we're getting dropped, and by the development of these characters that are happening. I just feel like I watched an amazing first chapter to something that's going to be even greater than this episode as it goes along. And so, yeah, dude, this thing is doing such a good job of roping me in. It's just watching Baby Yoda be happy is kind of like what I was waiting for. But then watching the epicness of these new shots of seeing how big the Leviathan is, and just, it was giving me things that I didn't know I wanted and things that I didn't know that the volume can provide. So I just can't say enough good things about this first episode. But yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about it more as we get to
man.
it.
What
is there anything you guys wanted to hit? Is that like the big thing we're going to talk about?
I think the thing that for me made it really, really fun was, Mando didn't start on Tatooine. We got him in another location where he got to meet, this alien character, Koresh, which was awesomely voiced by John Leguizamo, which I'm like, yes, my chef duo is back. I love it.
Miami, I am back, pal.
Getting, like the Gomorians fighting, and me, I made a callback to Masters of Terrakazi. That character, the Gomorian guards, were such a big part of that game. But then on top of that, this is a very Tusken Raider heavy episode, which also were in that game, and plus the bounty hunters, which were also in the game. And I'm like, man, this is even though it's probably was not done intentionally, the fact that I can trigger all those reminders to my childhood of how I experienced those characters in that context is really, really cool. Yeah. And then the other Easter eggs of Timothy Olyphant's character being in a previous book, him riding a speeder bike that's built out of one of Anakin's pod racer engines.
That little droid that was the one that exploded.
R5D4, yeah.
Okay,
the gonk droids in the background, the pit droids,
unit.
referencing Maz Espa and Maz Eisley, and actually seeing a map of Tatooine and understanding where those two cities are in conjunction to each other. And then going to Mos Pelgo, which, as far as I know, and I'm not the most well-versed expanded universe / legacy Star Wars person. My Star Wars lore mostly exists in animated TV stuff and the movies, but being able to go into a new part of Tatooine was really cool. And I loved getting a little bit of the backstory of what happened when the Empire fell, and how we assume through the movies that it was all a happy ending. It's not. A new revolution starts. A new type of villain emerges. A new type of oppression begins. And I loved that. And I was really hoping that Mandalorian would touch on that, especially with it being so close to where the original trilogy ended. And the fact that all it took was a couple of pieces of dialogue, exposition, and some flashbacks to really give us that impression was great. And I loved it. And, Hector, you talked about how Maz Eisley in the first season, even though it's only 5 years later, or I guess at that point it would have been about 6 or 7 years since we saw it in A New Hope. That progression was so impressive of now the droid is a bartender, ironically enough, and all those sorts of things. And to see how that world has evolved in just a 5-year period is really, really cool. And this episode, like we said in the reaction video, it tackles very, very sensitive subject matters, but it does it through the lens of Star Wars, which Star Wars has always done that. It's always been political. And I get a little frustrated when I see people online talk about like leave politics out of Star Wars. The whole foundation of Star Wars is politics. It's an empire versus a resistance, a rebellion.
Yeah.
That's what Star Wars has been about for 43 years at this point. So the way the fact that they can tackle these themes of racism and oppression and do it in a way that like as a viewer, you can't help but watch that and go like, ah, yes, great. These are two
Connect the
very
dots.
different groups of people who are coming together to fight a common enemy. Like that is what works so incredibly well in this first episode. And to have a character like Timothy Olyphant's the Marshal really be the guy who's like, just being very frustrated with like having to deal with Tusken Raiders and deal with that part of society. But then again, just coming together to fight this common enemy, I thought was done so expertly. And Hector, a lot of times, you were asking like, is this the volume? Is this the volume? They've really been able to perfect what that is and how they use it.
Yeah.
And it's like starting to get a little bit more sophisticated with like overhead, like cable camera movements across, locations. They're doing such an incredible job pushing that technology farther and farther and farther. And the interactions between the fake environment and the real environment, it's seamless, man. And like, I know we come from a visual effects background and we tend to have a really good eye about like picking out where things kind of blend together. This is so seamless that I'm at the point now where I'm not even doing that anymore because I'm like, I'm just fully immersed and I'm completely
it's not
in.
even an issue
Yeah,
anymore.
it's just so clean. And the fact,
I agree. Just like when we first started the episode where we didn't know if John Leguizamo's face was half CG, half animatronic.
It's so clean.
Which it looks like it might be.
and the big thing that I didn't notice, and I actually don't know at what point this happened, the aspect ratio changed. And it was anamorphic, and then it went to the full scale of the frame, and I was like, yo, oh my God, I didn't even notice this, but it's the same reason why I love watching movies, Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, DC movies, whatever, in IMAX. Because when the frame expands, things are about to get big and epic. And that's what happened. They go after the crate dragon, and it's just monumental and massive. So I love adapting those types of formats to, even though it's going from like a big screen to a small screen, it works for me because it's trying to tell a different part of the story now. Now we're going big and dynamic and epic, and it worked. So I think like technically, acting wise, just storytelling wise, everything was so strong. And like, I really care about the Marshal, and I hope it's not a one and done. He survives obviously, but I really, really, really do hope that we get to like see this character again. Cause Timothy Olyphant, so charming, so great. And, I just want to see more of him.
Yeah.
I mean, just like we saw the mechanic at the very beginning, I think we'll see him again in other situations. But this show was so expertly done. I think you hit all the good points, but I feel like we need to at least get into some theories about Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's talk about 404 error. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a flashback to him escaping the Sarlacc pit monster.
I agree.
And then I think we're going to learn throughout the season how Boba Fett, within that 5 years, lost his armor and what the hell has been happening to him where he's on Tatooine with like Tusken Raider stuff. It's like, whoa, did he, assimilate?
Did he abandon
into like a tribe?
The Mandalorian creed?
What happened? And it's going to give him, I think, just like I felt when we got Mark Hamill reprising his role as Old Man Luke in Last Jedi, where I went, holy shit, I love Luke Skywalker more than I ever have. Now I love this character. And now I can go back and watch the younger Luke, and even if stuff didn't connect for me, I can still appreciate the character knowing where he will end up because I love the Old Man Luke version. I want the same thing to happen to Boba Fett. I've always dug Boba Fett, but I did not have the love for this character the way so many people who grew up with the Star Wars movies in theaters and buying the original action figures and watching the Christmas special. Everybody loved Boba. He's the Fett man. He's super cool. But I was saying as we were watching the show, I liked Boba Fett as a child in Clone Wars more because he was more interesting because they could go into his character. He was a background player in the original trilogy and he looked cool, but I could never like connect. I think it's so smart that this Mandalorian show, it may have been based off of a Boba Fett movie script. Remember when that was going to
James Mangold was supposed to be doing some sort of Boba Fett thing, and now we don't know
whatever it was going to be. Dude that directed Fantastic Four was going to direct it. It's like, whatever it was going to be, I think they were smart to go, wait a minute, people don't know this character and don't have love for this character, so let's just start fresh anyway.
Yeah.
With a new character and a new story, but like slowly but surely feed the audience about stuff like the Mandalorian culture and what happened to Mandalore and the Darksaber and all this little stuff. And then boom, season 2, episode 1, show badass Tamar Morrison coming back. And it's like, oh, I'm so invested in this version of this character. Like, what the are they going to tell us that happened to him? Right. That's what I'm super excited about.
Yeah,
and I
think
agree.
I think what made it so cool was there were rumors that Boba Fett was going to show up in the show, and I saw photos of Timothy Olyphant yesterday on Twitter, but I was happy that like none of those. I couldn't see the armor. I had no clue he was wearing armor, so that was great. So to watch this and to see this guy walk in the door, and we're all sitting there like, that's not Boba Fett, but that armor looks.
Yeah.
And then you get the close up of the helmet with like, you know, Boba Fett famously has like that indentation on the helmet, and you're like, this is Boba Fett's armor. Holy crap. This, and then we started speculating like, does this mean Boba Fett's dead? Is it the armor? Like what's, and then to have that final shot at the very end over the sunset of all things, to see Tamara Morrison slowly turn around was just like, it was the icing on the cake.
Perfection.
I want that action figure. I want that action figure.
It was amazing.
And once again, though, guys, if you're not steeped in the Star Wars lore, it's not necessarily like, oh my God, it's just like, who is this mysterious person? And then we'll see, you know, like it's a good cliffhanger to figuring out what's going to happen.
I'm
next,
hoping
basically.
there's a ton of people that are watching and they go, Aquaman's dad? Cool. What's he doing in this show? I'm like, that's great. That's what I want.
Is this part of the Snyderverse? What's going on here?
Aquaman's
and like,
dad?
as someone who like, you know, watching, I don't want to like give too many spoilers away because at this point, I think you probably are there, Hector.
Dude, we talk
but
spoilers.
Like with Rebels, when certain characters come back, you're just like, yes, you're so hyped for it. And I think it's the same thing here. And I know traditionally Boba Fett was like a villain in the Star Wars original trilogy. I wouldn't be surprised if like we get a Boba Fett who's a little bit more of like a reformed character because of all the events that have occurred and everything that he's experienced and witnessed, which would be really, really cool.
He's a misunderstood character, Adam. That's what he is. You know?
It's also worth mentioning, this is the first episode directed by Jon Favreau. He didn't direct any episodes in the last season because he was making The Lion King at the same time. Wow. He had written a lot of them. But this is the first episode that he got to direct and write, which like, I love Jon Favreau as a director, you know, and I know that like I have my issues with The Lion King and Iron Man 2, but I love Chef. I adore the first Iron Man movie. I love
Elf.
Elf. Like so many of the other movies he made, I love so much. So the fact that he actually got to come in and direct and really put his mark on it was awesome. And I thought he did an incredible job. And like, this is the Jon Favreau that I adore and love so much. I've also been just like binge watching the Chef show on Netflix, which is amazing too. So it was like really cool to see somebody who, like Dave Filoni, just purely loves the essence of Star Wars and what it is, what it can be. And I think that's what's made it so different from the movies is it's not really had to worry about what the other, 6 movies did. And it's able to just really focus on like, cool, we're going to pay respect to the worlds that were established in those films, but like, let's just let it be our own thing. And I think the timeline also helps it really lean into that too, of being its own thing. So it's just like there's just so much love in this damn thing. And Amy Sedaris,
I think you like this show, Adam. I think you like this show.
I might.
Adam
like it.
Like
it might be fine. But
Adam
even seeing
doesn't like
characters like
Jon
Amy
Favreau.
Sedaris come back,
she's great.
Is great because she was like one of those supporting characters that you're like, oh, a highlight. And the fact that like they brought her back was amazing.
She was quirky and memorable enough that you wanted to see her back. Like the big curly hair. She is how we all feel for Baby Yoda. The moment she saw him, she just gushed.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Adam. This story is being expertly told by a master storyteller, Jon Favreau. He hit a grand slam with this episode because you felt the scale, you felt the importance, you felt the excitement. Like I'm glad they didn't just immediately start with the Darksaber, because don't forget, that's a thing too. So this show is going to take us on a hell of a ride, and I cannot wait, especially to watch it with you guys.
That was fun.
Like, this was so much more fun than just watching it, here by myself. So, yeah.
Guys, let us know in the comments below, what were some of your favorite moments of Season 2, Episode 1, Chapter 9, The Marshal of the Mandalorian. Let us know in the comments below. If you're listening on podcast format, jump over to the YouTube video, like, subscribe, check out our reaction, and we'll see you guys next week for another episode. And I cannot wait. It's going to be so fun. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next video.